Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Power clear.
There's so much stuff to sell to these anti-vaxxers. And the folks at Mattel are no dummies. They made a mint over Christmas with a twist on what is probably America's all-time favorite doll.
There's a new doll in town, and the fun is contagious. It's Antivac Barbie. She's strong. She's independent. She doesn't trust science.
Bill Gates is the Antichrist. Vaccines have Satan's blood.
Barbie comes with a computer so she can do her own research.
Says here Moderna turns your teeth Jewish.
Take your Barbies everywhere. Shopping.
I'm sorry, you can't come in here without a mask. I have a medical condition. I'm reporting this, and you're going to jail.
To the stables.
Thank you for sharing your medicine, dancer.
And on the plane. And the only mandate this Barbie cares about is with her proud boyfriend, Ken.
Hi, Ken. Want to go throw eggs at nurses?
Sorry, babe. Can't hear you. Alex Jones is talking about monoglobal antibodies.
Antivac Barbie. Exclusively available in Florida and Kentucky. Barbie Dream Ventilator sold separately.
Available at Walgreens.
What in the heck? Where's that from?
That was Jimmy Kimmel last night.
It's funny, but at the same time, how patronizing though.
Oh, you should watch the video. You should watch the video. It's so much worse when you watch the video.
You didn't get you deliberately told me not to listen to the intro to the show, and now I kind of know why. I mean, it is kind of funny, but it is it's patronizing, but to take things out of context,
Slightly, a little bit.
Well, I mean, now we can go out and say that most of these people are now having a little bit of egg on their face because of what's going on this week and last week. No, not the nurses, no. Same people like Jimmy Kimmel and whatnot. But everybody, folks.
I thought you would enjoy that because I...
Oh, you heard me laughing all the way through it?
I found that today while I was just perusing the internet looking for stuff to talk about, and I came across that. And at first, I didn't think it was that funny. Until I think that's like the third time I think I've watched that now. I'm like, you know what? Okay, is it patronizing? Is it wrong? Is it just painting everyone who has a dissenting view of the whole COVID regime in an unfair light? Yes, it is all those things. But at the same time, it's a little funny. And for this to come from Jimmy Kimmel, who's not funny...
That's where humor goes to die.
Yeah.
It's Jimmy Kimmel.
Because when you're bawling your eyes out about being a multimillionaire while you're complaining about healthcare, it's just it doesn't have the same effect.
No, that it's gun control. He was complaining about.
But it was also healthcare too.
No, it's something about. I think it's after the Parkland shooting or the one in Florida. He was crying about it on TV or something like that.
Who cares? I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel at all.
I don't either.
I don't watch any of the late night shows at all anymore because they're not funny. And Jimmy Fallon is that guy who thinks everything is just the most funny ever. It's the most hilarious thing ever, which it really isn't. But anyway, so welcome back everyone to this Denning Brothers show here for the Monday edition of the podcast. I've got a lot of things on the docket that I want to talk about, and I know I haven't really briefed you on anything.
Nope, I am just sitting here.
But I did.
What this is that you're Harry Doyle, and I'm the guy just.
You're the other guy in the booth.
Do you have anything else to say? Nope. Well, folks, he's not the best colored man in baseball for nothing. All right, folks, he's taking the field now.
So I guess I have to mention, because we live in Georgia, that today the El Presidente was came down south.
Was he?
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Well, it's because they're talking about voting rights. Voting rights was the big topic today.
The big rights.
And of course, as I was reading this article from CNN about the reason why Stacey Abrams wasn't there, today because all the leaders in the voting rights movement, and then especially in the African American movement, who are being disenfranchised by the evil voting restrictions known as ID laws, they were all up in arms because they don't want any more photo ops. They want action. It was funny today because both President Biden and Georgia Democratic gubernatorial candidate Stacey Abrams, I'm surprised they didn't call her governor because she thinks she is the governor.
What if Biden came out and said, "Welcome to Governor Abrams"?
So it's fascinating that Stacey Abrams, who is largely the reason why Georgia turned blue in the last election, decided not to show up for the voting rights rally that Biden was having out in front of where Martin Luther King was buried.
Well, and it's all for
or entombed. Or,
well, it's all
he
MLK.
wasn't buried; he's encrypted. But semantics.
Well, it's all for MLK Day next week. That's the whole.
Right.
It's the whole push is that it's supposed to be in his honor.
Right, and the Reverend.
Yeah.
Al Sharpton was out there. The Reverend Jesse Jackson was also out there. I still prefer fat. What's his name? Al Sharpton. Fat Al Sharpton in the purple jumpsuit.
Was Al Sharpton really fat?
Yeah. Look up a picture from Al Sharpton from the 80s.
Should I just search Al Sharpton fat?
Shut up, fat.
Shut up, fat. Oh, it does say wait.
Yeah, go to
weight loss came up. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that
what the crap? Why does it look like Barry White?
Maybe.
Look, I'm telling you, that is Barry White, dude.
Yeah.
Look at that hair. That.
It's the same person.
All right, stop the podcast. Listen.
Pause it.
Pause the podcast. Look up. Just type in Al Sharpton fat and then type in Barry White. It's the same person.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, so I prefer Al Sharpton in the purple jumpsuit.
I prefer Barry White Al Sharpton to the skinny one now. Wow.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I just made your world a whole better place, didn't I?
I love this. All right, continue.
But anyway, so to me, it's like, man, it seems like that the Democratic Party is fracturing. Maybe. But I also see on the Fox News, because I was going back and forth between CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, just to see what they were saying, and it was largely all the same thing. But anyway, and Fox News had on Governor Brian Kemp, Mr. I had my shotguns cleaning while I was sitting with my daughter's boyfriend in my campaign ad, and we're going to lower taxes here in Georgia because we're Georgia, or whatever, bing, 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 bong, 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 honey, boo, boo, kind of thing. But they had him on Fox News for whatever reason. He's about as interesting as a smallpox blanket. But
dang.
But he was on there and he was just spinning a big ball of yarn about how Stacey Abrams is the far left. And I thought, is she though? Is Stacey Abrams the far left? It's like when Sean Hannity says the radical left, Nancy Pelosi. It's like, no, not so much. If you wanted to say maybe like the Antifa wing of the BLM movement, yeah, that's the far left. But Stacey Abrams,
look,
no.
Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi have more in common than AOC and Nancy Pelosi.
Yes,
they have more in common,
without a doubt. As a matter of fact, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell have more in common than any of their constituents, for that matter. And even your own congressional leader, like our guy, I think it's Drew Ferguson, right?
Yes, it is.
He has more in common with I guess Mark Meadows than he does with us, because I've never met the guy. I didn't vote for him. He never reached out to me, but whatever. So
he sends me emails every now and then.
So is the Democratic Party fracturing because there's a lot of them resigning from positions because people are predicting a red wave because everyone's just PO'd
at the establishment.
At the establishment in the Biden's administration. Recently, there's some polls done that said that if the election were held today between Trump and Biden, Trump would win. And how 80% of Americans think that the country's on the wrong track. And I guess that's both left and right. People who consider themselves left or right think the country's on the wrong track. So I don't see how that's a vote of confidence for the Democrat, the DNC, or the liberal establishment in the going forward. Now, the whole voting rights thing, we've covered this before. The whole idea of voter suppression is the fact that you have to show an ID. You got to do that for literally anything in life. So, I mean, yeah, try again.
I've never understood.
Even people who consider themselves to be on the left, somewhat moderate, even maybe a little more, a little more left, you think that the whole idea that voter suppression to force to show ID, thinks that that's a little stupid. Because if you want to get on an airplane or buy a bottle of beer or, buy a gun or buy a car or check into a hotel room, you got to show ID.
Joe, it should be easier to vote than buy a gun, okay? Okay, it should be easier to vote than checking out a library book, okay?
Look, I had to say that because I get the NRA check this month, so I had to say that.
It did clear this morning, so we're all good.
But see, last month I had to call up Wayne LaPierre.
What a goofy name is that? As Carlin would always say. This is especially now coming with a lot of these people who advocating for vaccination passports and having to show your papers to go into any sort of business and establishment. They're really, really keen on you identifying yourself and whatever medical procedures you've undergone. They're very, very keen on that, making sure that's required. But showing. But identifying yourself properly in an election, which even if like me and Joe are very wishy-washy on elections, I think most of them are stupid and don't actually solve anything. But even if you play into the narrative that they're important and they're vital and they're the health of our democracy, air quotes, you would want people who are citizens and who pay into this whole Ponzi scheme that we're a part of, called the federal government. You make sure that everyone is an actual citizen and that actually pays into this with taxation or whatever else. I think that's pretty universal. Like, case in point, you wouldn't want someone who's not a shareholder of a company voting on board decisions. Like, that just makes sense, right? Those of you who know, if you're...
I own 4 shares of this company, and I demand a seat at the table.
No. If you own shares in a company, they'll send you voting. Like, I get them once a year, or like once a quarter, I think. I get... I actually have an ability to cast my vote for whatever board decisions are available. I mean, I don't own enough shares to make a difference, but I still have that ability. Now, if you were to give somebody the right to vote who wasn't a shareholder, who had no interest in that company, that would raise a lot of red flags. You wouldn't want that. As a business, you would not want that. So I've always found that weird, and then compounding that now with many places. I think in New York, they're allowing non-citizens to vote, but you can't enter a restaurant without identifying yourself and showing that place of business that you've undergone a medical procedure. It seems like a double standard to me. And I understand the argument of, you don't have the right to visit a business, but you have a right to vote. I think that if you enter in a private business on private property, and there's a mutual consent that you are allowed to enter that business, the business owner has no objections to you, regardless of whatever medical status you have. I don't think you get to be denied that right to occupy a space that you are. Have consent to enter. I think that's just that's not an argument.
It's not, and what also happened today too was Fauci and Rand Paul got into another brouhaha in a Senate hearing.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of that. I haven't seen the whole thing.
I watched the whole exchange. It was.
Did you watch the whole hearing, or did you watch the whole?
No, I didn't watch the whole hearing.
Like 5 hours.
No, I don't.
That's a lot.
I don't hate myself that much.
I'm about to say, do you hate yourself that much?
No. But Fauci, the lady who runs the CDC, which we'll talk about later, and some other lady were there, doing the quarterly conference on the administration's response to COVID, and of course, all private, maybe 2 or 3 people had any serious questions, because right after Rand Paul and Fauci got done with their mudslinging match. which Rand definitely won. The Senator Murphy from, I forget which state he's from, he's like, I just want to say, I want to thank you for your hard work and dedication, Dr. Fauci, and it's so sad you have to put up with this criticism.
He's not going to call you, bro.
He's not going to call you later.
He's not going to call you.
He's not giving you the hotel room number, okay?
He's not calling you, bro.
Yeah, so just drop it.
He's not going to call you.
But anyway, so Rand Paul and Tony Fauci get into it over, the lab leak in Anthony Dazic with the gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Just kind of a rehashing of what's already been said. And there was Project Veritas released. They dumped some documents today, seemingly proving that the criticism of Fauci coming from the right, as far as lab leak and everything, how he knew about it the whole time, we've all been correct on. It does seem a little too good to be true at this point, because basically everything that they dropped just kind of reconfirms that we've been right about everything almost to a T, and it just seems a little too good to be true. But go look at it, take it for what it's worth. But anyway, the part that killed me the most about this is that Fauci was lamenting that because of people like Rand Paul saying that we should fire Dr. Fauci, and he even is raising money off fire Dr. Fauci. He's saying, I'm getting death threats. I'm getting phone calls. My family's being threatened. My family's getting phone calls about how I need to be fired. And he said there was a man who was stopped or was arrested just the other week who was on his way to D.C. with an AR-15. Fully loaded magazines coming to D.C. to do business because he thought Fauci was killing people. And I thought, of all the people to complain to about political violence, you're going to complain to Rand Paul? I mean, come on. Let's be serious here, folks, okay? That he was shot at a congressional baseball game because some Bernie Sanders supporter fell off the wagon, wasn't taking his meds, and decided to go shoot up a baseball field full of Republicans, nearly killed Steve Scalise. Now, I'm not a big Steve Scalise fan or whatever, but nearly killed the guy, killed others, all because Bernie Sanders said that the Republicans were taking away the health care rights of Americans. Did anything happen to Bernie Sanders for that? No. That's the first incident. Nearly gets shot at. That's the first incident. The man was nearly killed by his neighbor. And meanwhile, while he was in the hospital fighting for his life, you had all these leftists, folks saying, oh man, I wish I want to buy Rand Paul's neighbor a beer.
They still do that.
They still do that.
It is still allowed on Twitter.
Every time that Rand Paul and Fauci get into it, it's like, man, where's his neighbor when you need him? Every time you see that in the comments.
That is still allowed on Twitter. I see it. Back when I was on Twitter, I saw it all the time. And of course, I reported it for inciting violence.
I mean, how is that not?
How is that not inciting violence? Now, that's not to say that, it goes without saying that, so no one should be threatening Fauci's life. That's wrong. Look, if a libertarian or someone in the liberty community were to do that, I would condemn that with the strongest terms possible. It's not the way we do things. It's not how. That doesn't negate violence. But at the same time,
but that's not all. The third time Rand Paul and his wife were attacked leaving a Trump event.
It was right after the election.
Right.
Or after the,
and they were swarmed by a mob.
Yep.
So if you're going to complain to anyone about political violence and political violence directed towards you, don't complain about it to Rand Paul. It's like, come on, man. Yeah, step up your game a little bit, dude.
These are the same people.
You want to compare notes on how you've been attacked? My life was literally put in jeopardy because of
These are the same people who cry about getting death threats online. And of course, death threats are always wrong. Calls of violence are always wrong. But they always complain to people who deal with this on a daily basis. As we said, go read Rand Paul's Twitter. Go read the comments. Everyone is calling for his neighbor, thinking it's funny and a joke. Do you think, there was someone else I was watching. I came across a Ben Shapiro video, and there was someone on. It was some. I forget who it was. Someone on the far left, and they were saying how I'm getting death threats.
The Nancy Pelosi far left.
Yeah, it was someone else who was complaining about how I get death threats, and Ben Shapiro's like, Have you read my comments?
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, everybody gets death threats. That doesn't make them okay. That That doesn't make it right.
Well, it's kind of like, welcome to political or public office.
So welcome to public life. That doesn't make it okay. But at the same time, I think that when everybody gets them, it weakens the argument of, I get death threats. Okay, guess who gets death threats? Everybody, every sitting senator, every sitting congressperson, every president, they get death threats.
Well, it's different when he's just a humble country doctor, Jacob.
I'm just a mere scientist, okay?
I'm just a scientist. Yeah,
I'm just a scientist, okay?
He did pull the line again. Well, I just make recommendations. It's
no, you can't.
Bullshit.
Okay. Even if that's true, you still cannot say that knowing the context of it. I've made the argument. I've made the argument 1,000 times. Warren Buffett couldn't go out there and say something about a product or a stock or he can't say about Berkshire Hathaway. He can't make a mere recommendation. Warren Buffett can't go out there and say, I love Coca-Cola. Everyone should buy Coca-Cola without disclosing that he owns Coca-Cola. Why? Because it's insider trading. He's like, I'm just making a mere recommendation to go buy this stock. It is not that like I own 400 million shares of it on the side.
As I chug my Diet Coke.
No, you can't. Your words have weight. This is why people on CNBC and Fox Business, they can't make stock recommendations if they own that product, because it's a conflict of interest. You can say, I'm just making a mere recommendation to go buy Apple when I own $100 billion of stock in it. Well, it's just my word, just my recommendation. You can't say that. Fauci has to understand that this is the dude that was put on the cover of Time magazine or whatever.
America's Doctor.
Yeah, America's Doctor, and he has this celebrity status. That's just really why.
Well, I just make recommendations, so.
Look,
well,
honestly,
if that's the case, then can we get rid of you, please?
Yeah, if you don't make policy, why are you still here? And, after Biden said there's no federal solution,
bye.
What are you still doing here? If all you do is make recommendations, and if your department has been told there's no solution, why are you giving recommendations to a solution that doesn't exist?
Well, how can you say, I just give recommendations, and then say, I am the science? Something's at odds here.
Dr. the Fauci. What did a Jimmy Dore call him? He called him Mr. Science.
Yeah, Mr. Science.
I think Mr. Science.
Yeah. But yeah. So that's all I really wanted to say about that. That's just the stuff that's been happening today. But staying on the COVID topic, the whole OSHA mandates are before the Supreme Court right now, and it's kind of weird that they gave the first opening oral arguments on a Friday, which seems
because they don't want you to hear about it.
It's because either that or they're just bored. But anyway, so I'm looking through all this stuff. I've actually found the transcripts from the whole thing because I want to read something because Slate wrote an article that was just so bad.
Didn't they say that Justice Alito and Roberts are like anti-vax or whatever?
Let me read you the headline of this trash,
travesty.
Travesty. It's the most childish thing. So here's the headline: COVID is an emergency. To SCOTUS conservatives, it's also an opportunity. It's an opportunity for what?
Didn't Sotomayor say okay?
We're gonna get to that because
it's. I don't know how you're allowed. Just keep going.
Okay,
I have to save my rage.
So a majority of the justices on the Supreme Court may not see COVID-19 as an emergency. So they go into the history and as far as I'll call it a mandate. I think you would call it a mandate too, the OSHA.
Yeah,
but they're saying
that's what Biden called it.
Right. But they're saying they're expanding on pre-existing rules and decisions that the Supreme Court and other governments and other courts and the government has come up with to justify it. So it's not really a mandate. It's just a continuation of what's already been the laws on the books. So it's not really a mandate because you can also just get tested too because that's not inconvenient at all.
To both the workers and the employers.
Right. that's not inconvenient at all. So I'll link to the article down below where you can go and read the whole thing. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. The first half of it is just basically giving the background of the situation. Although there are some really just childish stuff in the middle of it. Like, for instance, and what a session it was. The nihilism, hypocrisy, and armchair epidemiology on display at times bled into rank anti-vaxism. The conservative supermajority did not bother to conceal its contempt for the Biden administration's effort to root new policies in old statutes. As the basis for its employer mandate, OSHA cited a federal law that permits it to issue an emergency temporary standard when it determines that it is necessary to protect employees from grave danger resulting from physically harmful agents and new hazards. So you can just see the nonsense that this is. But what I want to get to is Justice Sotomayor kind of got herself into a little bit of a problem with some things that she said. And even the CDC director, she's so weak that she wouldn't say she was wrong.
I'm not touching that.
She just danced around the whole thing. So the now you can if you know what Slate is, you know where they're going to go. You know they're going to say that Roberts and Alito and Thomas and Kavanaugh and Barrett are all anti-vaxxers because they're conservatives. And if it wasn't for Sotomayor and what the other Bayer or whatever, if it wasn't for the liberal ones, the whole thing would have just gone off the rails.
It's all over.
So it's and then they also complain about the general solicitor, who are the ones who argue in front of the Supreme Court making their case, or whatever. So the whole question is, okay, are we going to issue a stay on this vaccine, not, in their words, mandate? And what that basically means is that, okay, are we going to give an emergency ruling on this? Now, again, if you want more context of the legality and constitutionality of it, Judge Andrew Napolitano has a podcast, and he breaks all this down. He is a much far better constitutional mind than I am, because he is the judge and I am not. So if you want a more hardcore analysis of it, I would point you his direction. But what I want to get at is that the so-called anti-vax statements that surfaced from Alito and by some others, it's because they just took everything that Samuel Alito said out of context, like completely out of context. So here's how it goes, right? So Samuel Alito is asking if OSHA has ever mandated a vaccine before, and the answer is no. They've never done anything that would affect someone outside the workplace, because OSHA is just supposed to be rules and regulations in the workplace. I think we all could agree with that.
It's kind of in their name.
COVID vaccines, on the other hand, affect you whether you're on the job or not on the job. Mm-hmm. And Alito just simply says, well, actually, I'll just read you from the transcript. So most OSHA regulations, of all the ones which I'm familiar, affect employees when they're on the job, but not when they are not on the job. And this affects employees all the time. If you're vaccinated while you're on the job, you're vaccinated while you're not on the job. Is this different from anything OSHA has done in that respect? The general solicitor says, so two responses to that. First, of course, there's also a mask and test option here. And Alito says, oh, okay, whatever. So the general solicitor says, Alito says, okay, well, I'm talking about just the vaccine. The solicitor says, so focusing just on vaccination, I think that it's a way to describe it that it also provides protection when you're not at work. Oh, isn't that just nice? But OSHA was directly targeting and trying to provide the protection at work, and I don't think that there's any basis in the text of the statute to think that this is a kind of, protection off limits. So then Alito goes into, he says, suppose that this protection were provided not by the administration of a vaccine, but by waving a wand over the employee when they arrive at work. Suppose that wand had the capability of taking away this protection when the worker leaves work. Would OSHA have the authority to tell employees we are going to waive. You must have this wand waved over you when you arrive, but you can't have it taken off when you leave. You understand what he's saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we are tracking.
Okay, so then the general solicitor or proglower says, no, I don't think that OSHA would have that authority. And he says, and Alito says, all right, so it's different in that respect, but here's another respect in which it may be different. And I don't want to be misunderstood in making this point because I'm not saying vaccines are unsafe. The FDA has approved them. It's found that they are safe. It's said that the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. I'm not contesting that in any way. I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm sure I will be
misunderstood. For the record, I am not misunderstood.
I'm sure I will be misunderstood. I just want to emphasize I'm not making that point. But it is not the case that these vaccines and every other vaccine of which I am aware of, and many other medications have benefits, and they also have risks. And that some people who are vaccinated and some people who take medication that is highly beneficial will suffer adverse consequences. Is that not true of these vaccines? And if it is that true? So you understand, right?
Yeah, he's not. This is the thing that we've always tried to say on this show is that you'll never, unless data comes out to support it, we're never going to come out and say that the vaccines are a straight killing because it's not true. That's not what they're doing. But the thing that always, and I think that what Alito is pointing to here a little bit is that you're not allowed to talk about the risks, even though there is risk. I mean, there is evidence to support that there is risk, especially for young men. But the fact that you get censored or deplatformed, as in the case of Dr. Malone in this case, it raises questions. Well, why are you not allowing people to talk about the risk whenever it's real?
Right.
That's not. It'd be like if you're not allowed to talk about the risk of a certain pharmaceutical drug.
Yeah. So
it's shady.
The reason why I'm reading this is because I want you to get the full context of what was said. So after he says that, is that true? There could be other risks. The general says, well, that can be true, but of course there is far greater risk from being unvaccinated. Alito says, but there are consequences. And the general solicitor says they're kind of talking over each other at this point. They said by orders of magnitude, if you're not vaccinated, you could suffer from risks from getting the COVIDs. And Alito says, right, there are some risks, but do you dispute that there is a risk with getting the vaccine? And this person says there can be a very minimal risk with respect to some individuals, but again, I would emphasize that I think that there is no basis to think that these FDA-approved and authorized vaccines are not safe and effective. They are the most They are the single most effective. Alito says, no, I'm not making that point. I tried to make it as clear as I could. I'm not making that point. I'm not making that point. I'm not making that point. There is a risk, right? Has any other OSHA ever imposed any other safety regulation that imposed some extra risk, some different risk on the employee, so that you would have to wear a hard hat on the job? Wearing a hard hat has some adverse health consequences. Do you think anything else like that exists? And she says, I can't think of anything else like that, okay? So you get the context, right? You understood what was said. You understood Alito is just coming from a place of, well, if we're going to talk about this, let's talk about everything. All options are on the table here when dealing with COVID. Let's talk about all the consequences and benefits from the vaccine. That seems legitimate, right?
Especially if you're going to be Supreme Court mandating it on people. I think it's pretty important to get all these details out.
If anyone's qualified to talk about the consequences and or benefits of a vaccine, it should be people like Robert Malone, Peter McCullough, even Fauci, the CDC director, and the Supreme Court justices. Because if these folks are going to decide if this is going to be a mandate or not, they should be allowed to talk about it in full context. So if anyone's allowed to talk about it, it's those folks. So back to the Slate article. So the anti-vax statement surfaced in earnest when Alito hounded the proglar about the risks of vaccines. He insisted that they didn't want to be misunderstood. I'm not saying that vaccines are unsafe. The FDA has approved them. It's found that they are safe. It says that the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. However, he then insisted, some people will suffer adverse consequences because there is some risk. The Proglar, the solicitor, reiterated that the FDA has found vaccines are safe and effective by orders of magnitude. Because he now sounded like he was spreading anti-vax madness, and the press would report that fact truthfully, Alito scolded, I'm not making that point, I'm not making that point, I'm not making that point, I'm not making the point that I am making. I am not making that point, he says. Is the way cases are discussed now. So, you want to take something out of context, that's not anti-vax. Saying that there might be consequences, that you might have adverse effects, is not anti-vax. So, in the cases the way it's, government officials and Supreme Court justices can just insist that vaccines are safe and important and also dangerous and bad. Pick your own facts, the danger of the COVID-19 and the efficacy of vaccines. It's your constitutional to be a right to be for and against public health at the same time. That doesn't make any sense.
But you have to understand where these people are coming from when they write these sort of things, right?
Yeah.
So they're coming from the argument that talking about the risk, talking about whatever small risk it would be, and it is a small risk. I'm not going to lie. It's a very, very small risk. You're not seeing it in a large population. You're not seeing it in these great numbers. Now, there are some people that are taking effect from this, especially young males are being hit the hardest. The thing is that you have to understand the way these people operate. Talking about the risk, talking about the whole enlargement of the heart, or whether it be the blood clots in women when it came to the J&J vaccine, that can cause vaccine hesitancy. That can cause someone to go, hey, I'm a young man who has, as I'm going to talk about, or I'm working on a little post on my Substack, where John Ioannidis, who's been correct about the whole death rate and the infection fatality rate, has calculated that, what is it? It's that if you're under the age of 20, you have like a 99.9987% survival rate or something ridiculously high, but yet they're not allowed to weigh that survivability rate if they're infected versus whatever percentage of the vaccine. If you talk about the risks that cause someone to be vaccine hesitancy, that's what you're not allowed to talk about, and that makes you anti-vax. So wanting to weigh cost benefit, wanting to have an informed consent decision upon what goes into your own body, that's anti-vax. This show is considered to be anti-vax because we want to get all the data, we want to get all the facts about this.
We do our own research.
We do our own research.
Critical thinking.
I mean, I just look at the professionals who were involved in the creation of this thing, and someone who's way smarter than me, and I look at him, and then I look at someone on CNN who gets paid by Pfizer $35,000 a day, Rachel Maddow, who pushes this thing and spreads more false information. Well, CNN gets paid for it as well. And then you have the other justice, Sotomayor.
We're getting to that.
Okay.
We're getting to that. So, as they continue on in the article, during arguments, the liberal justices, keep that in mind, liberal justices were forced to address the merits of the arguments, while also tampering down the anti-science hysteria of the opposing side. Because asking about side effects is anti-science, because that's how science works. For instance, Ohio Solicitor General Benjamin Flowers insisted that vaccines probably don't stop spread or transmission since he himself has COVID-19 despite being vaccinated. That's not anti-science. That is the science. The FDA, the CDC have all admitted. Fauci has even admitted.
The CDC directors came out and said again that it does not prevent and it does not stop transmission.
So how is that anti-science?
So
how is that anti-vax?
Is it still the pandemic of the unvaccinated? Should they apologize for that, for deeming half the population as the prime drivers of the spread of this thing?
Right. And I would think that if someone who can speak on whether or not the vaccines stop the spread and transmission and do not stop you from actually getting the virus is a person who is vaccinated but still has COVID. Like, if anyone can say, you know what, I got jabbed and I still got it, something isn't working. If anyone can say that, it's him.
Or it's working, but it's not working as I was told it was going to work.
Because early on, they say if you get the vaccine, you won't get COVID. Well, that turned out to be a big fat lie.
There is a video of Rachel Maddow saying that from March. It is on YouTube, and it is still up. It is not flagged as medical misinformation, even though we know that is not true. So Robert Malone will get taken down for publishing risks and publishing the effectiveness and the waning effectiveness, which we are all seeing. We're all seeing it now, and that's the whole point of the boosters, is because of the waning effectiveness of the procedure. But because a scientist who's gone against the grain publishes about it, he's taken off. But Rachel Maddow can still have a video on YouTube saying that if you take the vaccine, you won't spread the virus and you won't contract the virus. That's still up on YouTube right now.
So this whole article is written as a hit piece against the conservative members of the court because they're anti-vaccine, anti-science, whatever, right? They only go after the conservative justices, and they even said that the liberal justices had to combat the anti-science rhetoric from the conservatives. Little did they mention that Justice Sotomayor spread a little misinformation herself. just a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. So Sotomayor goes on a rant about how she claimed that there are 100,000 children in serious condition
right now
with COVID right now. Fact check, false. That is so far from the truth. Even the CDC admitted that she was wrong. But can Slate do the same? No. Now, if you're fact-checked to be wrong by the CDC, could that be, misinformation medically, Jacob?
I mean, it's spreading misinformation that is not, or spreading information that is not true, causing people to believe a false narrative, which is medical misinformation. So she said there's 100,000 kids right now hospitalized in critical condition.
I'll read you the quote. We have over 100,000 children which we've never had before in serious condition, and many on ventilators.
Okay.
Many on ventilators.
Do you have the number? Do you have the number? Because I have the number in my head.
Oh, we're gonna get to that. So according to the CDC. There has been 82,000 children ages from 0 to 17 have admitted to the hospital with COVID since August 1st, 2020. So that's just who have just been admitted to the hospital. 82,000 for the last 2 years have been admitted to the hospital. Not over 100,000. Now, Jacob, could you kindly inform the good folks at home what the actual numbers are as far as, the whole thing?
It's like there's been 86,000 children that have been hospitalized since the start of the pandemic. It's something like 86,000 children have gone to the hospital. And keep in mind, they finally have, look, this last few weeks, the corporate press has finally caught up to where we've been in like March and April of 2020. The fact that they're just now discovering, for some reason, that hospitals get paid more to have COVID positive patients. So they get paid more for a COVID death. They get paid more for someone on a ventilator by Medicare and other federal government handouts. But they're finally discovering right now that Fauci had to admit this, and Jake Tapper discovered this as well, that the number of people that are hospitalized with COVID versus for COVID, because right now, if you just type in COVID hospitalizations, which you can just do that, it brings up it brings up a pretty big number, and it's the largest number actually we've seen ever. So we actually broke the record this week with COVID hospitalizations, and right now there's 124,000 people supposedly hospitalized with coronavirus. And this comes after Dr. Fauci came out and said that, we're seeing record numbers of children being hospitalized. And he said, but you have to understand that that's different. It's a little inflated because most of those kids are hospitalized with COVID, not for COVID. This is something that we've said long, like 2020, like March, April 2020. The fact that you have people who, if you go to the hospital, and we can confirm this because we have a family member who works at a hospital, sees this firsthand. if you go to the hospital for any reason, you broke your foot, you got a hangnail, you're there for LASIK surgery or whatever. LASIK's not done in a hospital, but you get the point. If you're there for anything else,
go to the ER.
Go to the ER. You broke your arm. And, of course, they have to swab everybody. So if you break your arm and go there and you have the sniffles and you test positive for COVID, guess what? You're a COVID hospitalization now. You're
a COVID case.
If you are, exactly, you're a COVID case and a COVID hospitalization. If you are going and you're pregnant and you're giving birth and you test positive, you are a COVID hospitalization. How much sense does that make? And finally, since people who've been digging for the truth have said this, we've said this for well over a year now, that this has been going on. They finally came out and admitted it. Dr. Fauci admitted it, and a CNN story came across, and Jake Tapper was interviewing someone at the hospital, and they said that that right now in America, the people who are hospitalized with COVID and those who are hospitalized for COVID is about 40% inflated, almost half.
It's amazing.
Of the numbers are inflated because people are there for other reasons, and this includes people in the ICU. You know, not everybody in the ICU who has COVID is there because of COVID. Like, they could be, like, there was I think it was Colin Powell. Whenever he died, they said that he died of cancer. Never long he had blood. No, sorry, that he died of COVID. And the fact that they had blood cancer that he was fighting off. So maybe the blood cancer is what killed him,
possibly,
and not the COVID. But we're finally seeing this, and we've been saying this for I don't know how long because we saw stories about people who were going to the hospital, getting tested, positive case, but they were there for something else. They were in a car accident. You had people, and this also goes into the death numbers. You had people who were killed by a gunshot. We had a case in California. You had a motorcycle accident in Florida, and they caught them. It wasn't until the local news caught them and said, "Hey, this is not right. They didn't die from COVID." We're finally catching up to that, and then you have a Supreme Court justice saying that 100,000 children are in critical condition
on ventilators.
It's not even possible. Does that mean that the other 24,000 people are above the age of 20?
Or 17.
I don't think so. And the fact that not even that, like, even if she thought 100,000 kids were being hospitalized in critical condition, I just debunked them with a simple Google search. Like, 10 seconds. I have debunked a Supreme Court justice. And even if we go further, they haven't even reached a total of 100,000 kids hospitalized with the virus, not because of it, but with the virus. Now, will Justice Sotomayor get canceled? Will she get taken off of Twitter?
No, because she's combating the anti-science, anti-vax hysteria from her conservative members of the court.
She's battling anti-vax data by providing misinformation.
Yes.
So you have no power here. What is that from? You have no power here?
I don't remember. Satan, get thee behind me.
Gosh, I just don't know how. And the director of the CDC was like, well, that's technically not true, but I'm not going to come out hard against it because she's on my side.
Well, let's say, for instance, that Clarence Thomas has said that. Do you think that the CDC director would have picked her words as carefully as she did when talking about Sotomayor? Probably not, because they hate Clarence Thomas for so many reasons, and mostly because he's the best one on the court.
They hate him because he's not their black guy.
Right. He's not their. He's
like you don't. He's like, wait, you're a conservative. Wait, that's not how you're supposed to think. You're not supposed to think like that.
Yeah, you can't do your own research, Clarence.
How dare you look up to someone like Thomas Sowell? How dare you?
Yeah. But again, Slate. If you want to call out even though it's the most childish and stupidest, the dumbest way you can do it when talking about the hysteria, as you call it, from the right, well, how can you not call out the hysteria from the left? Because she's wrong. Even Jimmy Dore had a whole video on this about how wrong Sotomayor was and dismantling that article that she wrote. So, if misinformation can come from both sides. I know that's a shock to you, but it can happen, and it does happen. So it seems like Jacob said, they're now catching up with the fact that the COVID. I mean, we were saying that about deaths too, about how the death numbers and the case numbers are grossly inflated, and of course. Isn't it funny? And I think it was Peter McCullough was talking about. He also mentioned like mass psychosis, like what Malone had mentioned too. And when the hospital records a death, I think he said it takes like 6 weeks for that number to become public or something like that. They were getting a live feed of deaths and case numbers in real time on the tickers on TV, especially on CNN. They had the live ticker of how many cases and deaths there were. How are they getting that information so fast? So, I mean, I don't know, but...
Well, whenever the corporate press says that there's no mass psychosis, that puts my fears to rest.
Well, yeah.
Whenever the government's like, there's no mass psychosis, well, then that settles it.
The sky really isn't that blue. I mean, it's more
that that clears it up for me. It's just... I think this week is the week that we've really seen them start catching up to it, and I think we're at the cusp of the dam breaking open on all this, because even though we're seeing all of these, so we're getting more and more data on the Omicron death and the Omicron variant, and the fear that was being portrayed by this about the whole winter of death for the unvaccinated in despair, it's not coming true. And I think that people, even if you bought into this, you're reaching a critical mass point where it's like, okay, nothing they're saying is coming true. This whole death and despair thing that's supposed to happen for the unvaccinated, it's not happening. And I'm being told I got to get a booster because my first two are waning. Because look, you can flag me as anti-vax for saying that the first two doses are waning. Right now, at my college, I'll say it, Valdosta State University. I got an email about it. They have a new policy there. If you contract COVID and if you are coming positive contact with somebody, in your vaccine, your second dose of your vaccine of Moderna and Pfizer is older than 6 months, and 2 months if you took J&J, you're considered unvaccinated.
That's incredible.
That's my college. Now, of course, I don't go to campus, but that's my college said that. So, if you want to, I know that you can get banned from Twitter for saying that the first two doses are waning, but if my college is now considering me unvaccinated, and you have other countries around the world that use Pfizer and Moderna that are saying that you're unvaccinated, and I have to get a booster, because why would I need to get a booster if my first two covered me? Or maybe because it's waning slightly. It doesn't make any sense. If it was really two and done, then the booster is unnecessary. Now you have the CEO of Pfizer came out today and said that they have an Omicron variant Pacific vaccine that'll be coming out in March. So get ready for your booster and your Omicron shot. Because remember, the only way out of this is to buy my product.
Now,
that's the only way out.
Now, speaking of variants, or speaking of boosters and whatnot, it's like every 10 years you got to get a tetanus booster, right? There are other vaccines that you have to get a booster a few months after or whatever, but that's for like malaria and typhoid fever and stuff, really serious stuff.
Stuff that you'll actually die. Like there's no sniffles from typhoid fever. Okay.
Right. And a lot of people have made the point. Some people on the right will say, "Well, you got to keep getting these boosters," and we've never done that before. And some people will say, "Well, no, that's not true because with tetanus and other things like that." The problem is, though, when they link your booster with your job, they've never done that.
You've never lost your job because you didn't get your tetanus booster.
It's never been a jab for a job. It's the job for the jab. It's never been that before. We've never done that before. We've never done, oh, you can't go to school if you don't continuously get the booster for each and every new variant. That's never happened before. So you can say, well, the schools have had vaccine mandates. Yes, they have. I'm not a big fan of that.
I'm still against those.
Still against that. But this is different because it's of a novel virus that you have to get a new jab every quarter. That's never been done before. So it is different. So like Israel, they're on their fourth shot now. Is it going to be fifth? Are they coming for the sixth shot too? That's never been done before. We've never done that. And you can bring up you can bring up the flu from 1918 or whatever. Or you could bring up George Washington mandating vaccines. Again, that was military service, and it was wrong then. George Washington was wrong. Shouldn't have done it.
I like if people throw that argument out there.
Well, George Washington didn't.
It was, you know what Washington also did? The Whiskey Rebellion. That was also really, really bad. That was wrong. He should have been impeached for that.
Right. So he was wrong then, and it's still wrong now. So that's not an I got you. Ooh, I got you because you like Washington. No, I got you. No, it's not. Try again. No, it doesn't work that way. And you could bring up the 1918 flu and say, oh, well, the government had to take, precautions or whatever. Like, still was wrong then, too.
Doesn't make it right.
Just because there's a so-called health emergency doesn't mean that this part of the Constitution no one has ever seen before comes into play, and then they have all this broad authority to do whatever the heck they want. Doesn't exist. Never has existed. Okay, so try again.
That doesn't work then, and then this also goes with my argument, and people have asked me about how I feel about climate change and what should I do about that. As I said, is climate change is happening? Sure. I'm not going to deny that there's been a change in the climate, and that we don't know the consequences or the risks of it. And humans, if I was a betting man, I'm betting that dumping all of the CO2 and the pollutions we do, I'll say that's not a good thing. Like, that's not exactly a good thing. But is the solution to give more power to government? No, that's not the solution. Same thing with the vaccine and with COVID. Is COVID a threat? Sure. I'm not gonna sit here and we've never at any point in this podcast has ever said that COVID is not real and it's not a threat to certain people. But is the solution total government control over whether or not you can have a job, or whether or not that you can travel to a first world country? Right now, with my medical status, I could not enter the country of Canada. I've tried. I've looked online. They won't let me in. A first world country, Canada. I'm not traveling to Ethiopia or the Congo, where yes, I would want to take certain vaccines because of the diseases that are there. Malaria. That could really hurt me. Yes, exactly. I'm traveling to Canada. They won't let me into the country of Canada.
Or if you want to go to England or to France or to Germany.
But the argument that people use, again,
first world countries.
For this one at the same time, we got to get vaccinated to go to the Congo or to Nicaragua. Yeah, well, why do you think that is? It's not because I'm going to give it. It's to protect me from things that I haven't done. That's not the case of this vaccine that's being pushed. The case of this vaccine is to protect other people, and they've had to walk that back a bunch. But I don't take a scarlet fever or a malaria vaccine to protect people in those countries. No, I take it to protect me, which has been the argument of this show forever. But I'm not. I'm going to Canada. Like, I would like to go to British Columbia out west. That's something I would like to do, but I can't. It isn't. They've even said even if I test negative and I have no symptoms, I'm not allowed into Canada. How much sense does that make?
You don't have it, but we still won't let you in.
You don't have it, clearly.
Because our vaccinated citizens might give it to you.
It's not an argument.
We're going to circle back to climate change just for a moment. The thing that kind of debunks the whole climate change, whether or not it's human caused, is the fact that there were dramatic changes in the climate on the Earth pre-industrialization. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Al Gore.
Well, what I've always said is that
put that coal in your pipe.
Is that even if we're not causing, even if humans are not the direct cause of climate change, which I probably, as I said, if I'm a betting man, I would bet that we're not putting it in the good direction. I still come from the standpoint that we shouldn't be polluting oceans. We shouldn't.
Well, yeah.
If we can get to a point of human civilization where we're carbon neutral, or even carbon negative, I think overall that'd be a good thing. I'm not going to say that if one day that we're able to run everything off of electricity and we get all of electricity through renewable sources and there's no need for fossil fuels, I think that the world would be a better place. Yes.
I don't disagree. The reason why I don't believe the climate hysteria is because the same people say we need to go to clean energy will ostracize and will demonize nuclear power.
Well, yeah, that I think is wrong as well.
That is, you want to talk about the ultimate way to get off fossil fuels, it's nuclear power. But the AOC types and the Greta Thunbergs will say, well, that's wrong, we can't do that. Well, these are the options we got, okay? You can't run everything off wind and solar. It's just not possible right now. I did want to get into something else. We're running short on time. But talk a little foreign policy. The Russia and the U.S. are meeting today to squash the beef. As far as
didn't they meet already?
Well, they're meeting this week.
Okay. They met yesterday, and that's when all the news came out.
Yesterday, they met for the first time, and they kind of reached an impasse where they talked about where they're not going to put missiles and whatnot. There's been a kind of another brouhaha going on in Kazakhstan, which, for those of you who don't know, Kazakhstan is another country that borders Russia. And it's another country that there's some civil unrest going on because of there were subsidies and price limits put in place on certain petroleum products that kept the prices low. They reversed those rules, and now the prices for natural gas and gasoline have skyrocketed, which has led to an uprising from the people. Some people are saying that this is another attempted color revolution, another attempted coup in this country to cause more problems in that part of the world for Russia. I know that the Rand Corporation had said that this was another country that they wanted to go after for various reasons. You know, it's interesting that even though it's been 30 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, it's been 30 years since the Soviet Union Soviet Union's been gone for 30 years. The Rand Corporation and the U.S. military still thinks it's important to mess around in countries like Kazakhstan and Moldova because to go after the great threat that is the USSR that doesn't exist anymore, which is fascinating. But the problem is that the Kazakhstan government was asking for assistance to send in peacekeeping troops into Kazakhstan to help with the riots. And of course, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, was like, well, we're watching this very closely. You know, we don't want Russian troops going in there, as if it's any of our business what Russia and Kazakhstan decide to do. They were calling into question the legitimacy of the request from the Kazakhstan government of whether or not they were truthful in the fact that they asked for the troops to come in and help break up the riots. Now, from what I understand, the riots are done. They're over with. The president of that country has said that he weathered a possible coup attempt from whatever. And again, Kazakhstan is another place that no one can point to on the map. Yeah. No one. Can anyone point to Kazakhstan on the map?
Get a world map that is unmarked and point me to Kazakhstan.
Right. You couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it, exactly.
I probably could now because I've looked at it. I probably could get pretty close.
Or even Ukraine. Point to Ukraine.
I could point to the Crimea and the Crimean Peninsula because it's kind of like the tip of Sicily in Italy is kind of what it looks like. But again, though, the talks of the Russia and the U.S. meeting, because Biden says there will be consequences to pay if Russia goes into Ukraine. It was also announced that there are other countries considering going into NATO. Turns out these countries also are very close to the Russian border. So it's more of the same. Now, I know a lot of people will get a bad rap who say that maybe we should antagonize Russia. I know it's a crazy idea not to antagonize the second or number one largest holder of nuclear weapons. I know that's a crazy idea. I know it's stupid to not do that, but call me crazy. But it seems like it's time to put away the dogs, calling the doves. Let's stop this, okay? If I had any advice to give to the Russians and to the U.S. negotiators, try to work this thing out, okay? Vladdy, don't go into Ukraine. It's not a good idea. And you know what? We're not gonna bring them into NATO. We're not gonna bring all these other countries into NATO, because it's just not necessary. Now, again, the whole idea of NATO is ridiculous. The Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. Did you know that we are on the hook to defend 29 different countries if a war were to break out in any of them? 29 different countries that we are...
It's most of Europe.
Legally,
it's basically all of Europe.
We are legally responsible to go into the defense of if they get invaded by Russia or someone else. 29 countries. I can tell you, we don't have the resources or the manpower or the willpower to do that. So it's kind of like, well, you're on your own. These countries have large enough GDPs. They have large enough amounts of capital they can get their hands on to defend themselves.
Well, let's just say that if Russia would even be able to do that sort of assault, because doesn't France have a bigger GDP than Russia?
The state of New York.
Yes, I'm saying.
The state of Texas.
Has
Germany has a larger GDP, probably.
Germany is the largest thing in Europe, and I know that France does. So the fact that this is even the thing that caught me. I've been following this more and more this week. The thing that caught me was Putin said that if they continue to put missiles on the border and to antagonize Russia, that it's going to be cut all diplomatic ties with the U.S. And I'm sitting there thinking that if you're going to do an action that's going to cut diplomatic ties with the second largest holder of nuclear weapons,
I think they have more.
Does Russia have more than us?
I think it doesn't really matter because.
Anyways, they're our next rival. I'll say that with nuclear weapons. If you're going to cut diplomatic ties, the action that they're proposing on doing better be pretty dang important to America.
It better be worth it.
And it better be worth it. Is Ukraine really worth it? Okay. Should Putin go into Ukraine? No. Is he going to? I have no idea. It doesn't seem like that'd be a good idea in his interest. But even if he does, how does that affect the United States of America? Like, how does that affect us? And people, I have heard this argument many times. Well, Putin's being antagonistic. Really, Putin's the one that's being antagonistic? I said there was an article that I wrote a while back, and it was at Putin's last. It was at his end of year summit, and he was saying that there's the continuation of missiles along the Russian border is unacceptable, and that he'll be talking to America and other NATO about this later. I always say, okay, people who say, oh well, we gotta have missiles on the border of Russia, and Putin just has to deal with it. I say, okay, let's just say that Russia had nuclear missiles in Quebec, all along the border of Mexico, in Vancouver, and Toronto, and they were pointing at major cities in America. And Biden got really upset about that. Well, Biden's just going to be Biden is just wrong, and he just needs to deal with it. That's just Russia.
Stop antagonizing.
And let's just say that that Canada and Russia and Mexico were all in an alliance together, that they agreed that they were not going to let us to expand upon our shores, and that if we did, we would all agree to come and fight us. And then they just kept creeping closer and closer, because remember the whole agreement about how NATO wasn't going to move closer to Russia. They had further east than what it was.
Germany,
yes, and how that was broken. What agreements? So what things has Putin broken on that so-called agreement? I only see one side that's antagonizing. I only see that one side that keeps creeping and breaking their agreements.
He did go into Crimea and into the Donbass region. It's like, wow, but you went 600 miles east, even though Gorbachev was promised by Baker that he wouldn't do that. 30 years of lies was broken. Now, what kills me is that for decades, Sweden has had a policy of neutrality. They don't get involved. They're considering joining NATO. Is the situation this dire that Sweden is now thinking about joining NATO? No, it's not that dire. What this is, it's the global elite. It's the globalists. It's NATO, it's the EU, it's Blinken, it's the Rand Corporation, it's all of these other factors that are at play here. Why? Russia is not a threat to anyone. Not a threat to anyone. So why are we doing this?
Well, we can make them a threat to us.
We can make this a problem. If they really wanted to make this a problem, they could. You're poking the bear, okay? Vladimir Putin is not a dumb guy. He's not stupid. He's very smart. In fact, he's probably the smartest person on the global stage, okay? He's former KGB. He doesn't play around. He knows what he's doing, okay? He does not mince his words. When he means something, he means it. And a type of guy like that, I wouldn't want to mess with. See, that's the reason why a lot of people liked Trump, because he was they were very similar in the ways that they spoke. Now, that got him to trouble sometimes, but that's one of the reasons why people say that he was respected. Now, whether or not he actually got that respect, that's a different question. But with Putin, it's a little different, because as much as Trump likes to bloviate, he wasn't former KGB. So Putin's not he's not a dummy, okay? He's not Biden's puppet. Okay, he's not a Biden puppet like Trump was a Putin puppet, or he was Vladimir Putin's blank holster like what what's his face said, the Late Show guy, Colbert said.
I have long said on this show and in person that I would much rather have the President of the United States, whoever that may be, and Putin every Saturday morning drink tea and eat scones if that meant that there was peace. No NATO and peace and good relations between both governments.
Good political and economic relations.
I would much rather. You know what? I'll flip the bill if that means that there's peace. I'll shoot them $40 for good tea and scones every Saturday if that means that there's peace between these two countries and that NATO can finally dissolve and we're not spending billions of dollars every year. This plays, even though I'm against the argument of universal health care and government being in charge of health care, I'm woefully against that. I have a hard time arguing against people who say we spend billions of dollars on crap like NATO, but we can't provide health care to people.
Yeah.
In the time of a pandemic. I can't argue against that, even though I don't agree with them. They make an extremely valid point.
Or they look at something like Afghanistan, the
exactly.
mountains of money, the trillions of dollars that was spent in Afghanistan for nothing, and you see how things turned out when we left. It's like you can do all that, but yet it's obscene to spend some money on healthcare. It just doesn't. I can see where people like Jimmy Dore have a large appeal.
Yes.
But
they're winning that argument. Yeah. That is a very winning argument. I can't disagree with that.
To me, it's interesting that the right will say, well, government health or single payer health care is terrible. It's a bad idea. Costs too much.
Yes.
But at the same time, we can go and spend all this kind of money in the Middle East building sandcastles for no reason. But that's perfectly okay. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That is money well spent. Okay, we can rob people for that, but not rob them for health care.
Right. It's like, have you seen our sandcastles?
Hey, by the way, I know we just finished the last segment, but did our Russian check clear?
Yes, it
okay,
did.
Good. Okay, just making sure we didn't edit that out.
I was delivered
the rubles.
The Kremlin personally delivered a case of vodka.
Okay, that's good.
The good stuff.
The good stuff.
Yeah. And I've been. We also have an invitation to ride on Putin's plane.
Oh, okay.
Whenever we want.
So, I want to ride horseback with Putin.
I want to ride bareback. Ride on the bear like he rode.
Yes.
I want to ride
that Putin goes up to Siberia and then finds a bear and just straddles it and just rides it like a horse.
Yeah, that's what I want to ride on a bear's back with Putin.
That's what he does. He'll just he'll be hiking shirtless.
Yeah.
And then he'll find the bear and he'll just run after it and then he'll tame it.
He
tames the bear, Joe.
Wasn't the video of him attacking that clown real?
No, that's what I made up.
Oh, you did?
I made that up.
Okay, because they wasn't he in his motorcade and he stopped the car to beat someone up?
No, that is what I made that up. I said back when that whole when the clowns things happened over America, and you had the people dressing like clowns walking the highway, which I did see very creepy, by the way. Driving down 75 and there's a clown on the side of 75. I said, you know why there's none in Russia? It's because they caught Putin punching one to death on camera. He was riding home in his limousine, and he's like, stop.
Yeah.
Sees one and just punches the guy to death.
With Putin, right, I can have a level of respect for him because the way that the country is moving, I think, is better than it was under the Soviet Union. I think we all can agree with that. But at the same time, though, doesn't mean that there isn't corruption. Doesn't mean he doesn't do bad things.
He does a lot of bad things.
Like some of the laws that they're talking about, like cracking down on pornography, they've made it illegal there. Which, okay, whatever. But the problem is that it's hardly enforced. But when it is enforced, it's only enforced against his political opponents. or the anti-gay laws there. It's really only enforced against political dissidents. That's not good. I think we all can agree that that's wrong.
That and the whole issue with his political rivals and Alexei. What's his last name? Alexei Nalev, I think was his last name.
Yeah.
That whole situation was really bad.
That's wrong.
That's wrong. But again, you can say that this man is does a lot of really bad, horrible things. That doesn't mean that we need to doesn't mean that we need to make him our enemy.
Right. Putin is not Stalin.
No, and he's not Kim Jong-il either.
Yeah, he's not Stalin. He's not Lenin. Okay, there's a big difference, right? You know, we can talk about the problems with Putin, but you know what? There's problems with what's going on with Macron and Joe Biden, and even with Pretty Boy up there in Canada, Trudeau. Wasn't it Macron said he's going to punish the unvaccinated?
He's going to make it. He's gonna punish them, and then Trudeau said something like it's gonna make life hell for.
Right.
I forget. It was,
one of
them,
not
exactly right.
One
That's
of them,
along those
one of them
lines.
also said that the unvaccinated tend to be misogynist and racist.
I think that was Trudeau.
Trudeau.
It sounds like something that like Canada would say. They would bring something like so women hating racist in there,
anti-Semites
in Canada.
So if we want to talk about corruption and blame, there's plenty of it to go around in any government in any country. So it's not like just the Russians are particularly bad at it.
You can talk. Look. The last 4 or 5 of American presidents, just American presidents, belong in a cell for some war crimes.
All you got to say is 2 words: Hunter Biden. That's all you got to say. You want to talk about corruption? Hunter Biden and his laptop. You know, that was all censored right before the election, and they found out that if people knew about it, they may have changed their vote.
Well, that and the whole Ukraine petroleum.
You want to talk
thing.
About election interference from Twitter censoring stories about Hunter Biden's laptop, and people said if they had known about it, they may have voted differently. If that's not election interference, I don't know what is. But anyway.
But Joe, they had to maintain. They had to stop misinformation. Okay,
yeah.
They had to stop misinformation. They have to know that we're on their side. Okay.
Right. Yeah. I'm so happy.
So, is that about all you want to talk about? I mean, we did go about 18 minutes over. So.
I just as we're wrapping up, I do want to mention that Tim Pool had on Mike Rowe.
Oh yes, it was very, very good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Probably one of the better shows he's done this year.
Yeah. Mike Rowe's the real deal. Yeah, I heard that. Yeah, all but 5 of them he's done this year. No, Mike Rowe,
I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but
I think that Mike Rowe, seriously, not to rabbit trail too long. I think that he's like the everyday man's celebrity.
Yeah,
because there's no way to go about it. He's a celebrity. People, you just you don't do what he does and not have that sort of fame. But I think that
he's a blue-collar celebrity.
People can relate to him. Yes, he's a multimillionaire, but people can relate to him. I don't think that the fame. I don't think that he's lost whatever values and whatever morals that he once had when he started Dirty Jobs or doing anything like that.
Same guy.
Same guy. And I think that he is the voice for the little person. I think that he is the voice for the everyday blue-collar American. And not in a fake way, like, you could have, like, so Jeff Foxworthy or someone like that who who's else is one of those other people that, like, have a character they play.
Larry Caleb?
Yeah, exactly. That's all a character. Let's just be real.
Yeah.
No, that's just how Mike is, and I think
it's not like a politician would say. I represent the blue collar working American man and women out there in middle America, everyday USA.
Yeah,
it's not like that.
I think there's few people that have dedicated their life to giving those people a voice. And the one thing I liked what he said on the Tim Pool show is that he treats the sewer inspector the way that American Idol treats like a winner. Is that he's their superstar of the week. And I think that's really cool because there's a lot of professions and a lot of people out there who don't get the appreciation that they deserve.
Well, the people that work in the infrastructure, plumbers,
and
metal workers, welders, HVAC guys.
I understand that those jobs are not for everybody, but there's people and there's someone's got to do it, and people step up and do it.
And they get paid pretty well to do it. Too.
Well, yeah, and that doesn't mean that it's for everybody.
But I think those types of jobs have been so stigmatized as beneath you that there's such a huge need for these types of jobs but people won't film because they think it's beneath them. Like, what do you want to be, a plumber? I'm like, no, plumbers make good money and they are absolutely needed in any society, right? Not everyone can be Jake Paul. Like the push for everyone to work from home and work online and have an online business, that might work for some people, but you still need plumbers, you still need welders, you still need guys to put HVAC in. You still need people to fix elevators. You still need guys to pour concrete and to build the roads we all drive on. Those jobs are just as important as the fantasy of the so-called influencers. Which again, influencers are not really a real career. You're just living off of the fandom of teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's necessarily. Now, what I understand is that people may listen to that and then hear, oh, well, I have a white collar job. That means it's not useful.
That's not
what he's saying.
Not what I'm saying.
But I think where he pushes it and where he really hits home is that there are people out there who dedicate their lives to becoming famous and to becoming sensations, whether that be through
music.
They bring up the idea of American Idol, or the example of that, or there's this really weird thing that I've never quite understood. That's come around through my generation and the generation that's coming up, the Zoomer generation, and that's just this need to become famous and become an influencer and a content creator. And we're content creators. I have a YouTube channel that doesn't get used very much, but we had this podcast and I write on my blog, my Substack. We create content. But the long-standing point of the show is that if we get famous from it, cool. But if we don't, that's not the whole purpose of the show. Is not to get famous. I mean, sure, would a bigger audience be awesome to spread the word of celebrity and freedom? Absolutely. But I'm not doing this to become the next Tom Woods or the next Dave Smith. That's not my goal. That's not what I want to do. I don't want to be. I don't want the podcast to be Jacob Standridge because that's not who. That's not. I don't want to be. I guess that falls into the whole Neil Peart example of I don't want to be defined by what I do per se. I want to be defined for other things. And that's a really weird thing is that everybody now wants to be a YouTuber, wants to be a streamer. Or a gamer.
I think it was
or a TikTok sensation, which I can't imagine a more
self-centered,
societal draining career than being a TikToker. I can't imagine anything. Honestly, I think that being a drug dealer is honestly more beneficial to society because at least people can get medicinal purposes from the marijuana they're smoking.
Well, I mean, when you look at careers like so-called influencer, it's a so-called career that's based off only consumption. You don't produce anything.
No.
Your job doesn't produce anything of value besides, you get some likes and people might have a chuckle. That's the thing too about movie stars and athletes. Okay, it's great that you can do these things, but you don't really produce anything.
I was going to say that your job. I was going to say that you have
besides
to
entertainment.
Build. Well, I don't think that every job has to necessarily build something.
But the difference is, right? The plumber provides a benefit to society because he can fix things, he can make things, right? Just as the same as the guy who works in a hedge fund provides value because he knows when to make the right trades. Those kinds of jobs are needed, right? You need the office workers, and you also need the people that get their hands dirty. the hand, the clean hand washes the dirty hand, right? You need both those types of people in society to do things. Because if all you have is people that work as influencers or office jobs, not disparaging office jobs because they're needed, but if that's all you had, society would fall apart because there's no one there to build and maintain the infrastructure that we all rely on.
But I think you're close, but you're missing this one point. Is that art is extremely valuable to culture and to society.
Oh, it absolutely is.
And I think that where you may be misleading people is that I'll say this: is the world a better place because the Beatles exist?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Is the world a better place because Rembrandt and Michelangelo exist and Rush and all these Michelangelo? Yes, it's Michelangelo Badio. Is the world a better place because of their existence? Yes. Now, if everybody was the Beatles,
that's the point I'm making.
Nothing would be built.
Yes.
And if there was no Beatles, life would be things would be built, but it'd be pretty dang boring.
Right.
So
the point I'm making is that is if everyone lived the life of an artist, society would fall apart.
Yes.
There's people need to realize that. The fame and fortune is probably not always cut out for them. And the people that are telling you that you can get massive amounts of fortune by growing your influence and becoming famous are lying to you. It doesn't work out for everyone. The jobs of trades and those kinds of jobs have been so stigmatized and so belittled that nobody wants to go in that direction. So I'm not blaming the people that want to be influencers. I'm not saying that it's their inherent problem, because as a society we have decided that the guy who's on his hands and knees crawling through a crawl space to fix your plumbing is somehow beneath you. We've done that to ourselves, and I don't want to blame young people, but at the same time, if everybody wanted to be an influencer, society would be far worse off. But again, like Mike Rose said, Marco Rubio said in a debate that, we need less philosophers, more welders. And Mike Rose said, well, no, I disagree with that. We need more philosophers that can run a perfect bead, and we need more welders that can discuss philosophy. So it's both.
I will say this. This might give me some flack, but I don't care. You said that there's not necessarily anything wrong with wanting to be an influencer or striving for that. I'll say this about that, and I kind of disagree, but at the same time I do agree. If your entire life is fixated upon becoming famous, whether that be through an influencer, whether that be through any sort of piece of art, if your sole purpose is to become famous, not that you don't want to be recognized, because obviously if you're in a band, you'll become famous, because that's the whole point. You want people to listen to your music.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be appreciated for your art. But if you're doing that for self-fulfillment and you're doing that because you feel that if you do, your life will be improved, I think there's something mentally wrong. I think there's something wrong with you to think that fame will
fix all your problems.
And that's not necessarily your fault. I think that's a societal thing. I think society-wise, we're definitely there. There's an article headline I showed you, and it said that I'm going to butcher it, but it was something along the lines of a study found that people who worship celebrities tend to be less intelligent. Because I think that there's a class of people out there who just see someone on a reality TV show and say, well, why can't I be that? Well, if I was that, then I'd fix my life. Well, if I could just win American Idol, that'd fix my life. If I could get, the number one most followers on TikTok, that'd fix my life. And in fact, as I think that Jimmy Dore talked about this many times, he said that becoming famous only amplifies your problems.
I think Steve Harvey said that as well, too.
Yeah, because it just amplifies.
He's a very famous, wealthy guy, and he said, well, when you get wealthy and famous, your problems just get bigger.
Yeah, your problems get magnified, and they get put on a public stage. So whatever problems you've already had, just
the whole world will see
will see them. But I do think that there is an issue. It's an epidemic. And unfortunately, there's a vaccine for this virus, but this need and this strive to become famous. Not that becoming famous is necessarily a bad thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with people recognizing you if you offer value in a form of art or entertainment. Like if you're a funny person, I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to become, the next Dave Chappelle, the next Richard Pryor. I don't think there's anything wrong with that if you're a comedian. Or if you're in a band, you say, hey, I want to be the next Beatles. Nothing wrong with that. I think that's a noble thing to do, to be appreciated. But if you think, well, hey, if I become the next Beatles, then my life will be perfect.
Well, I also think too is because
if I don't, then my life will be crushed.
Right. Two things. The real hard manual labor has been so demonized that because of that, because everyone's become famous, it's become easier. The tools are more accessible to become famous, right? For instance, how many shows did Rush play a year back in the late or mid-'70s, right? They played hundreds of shows a year.
I don't think they headlined their first tour until...
late 80s?
Permanent Waves, Moving Pictures.
So early 80s.
So I think that Moving Pictures might have been their first album. I'm going to look it up real quick.
So bands back in the day had to play hundreds of shows. The Beatles played hundreds of shows every couple of years because that's the way it worked. It was word of mouth. Whereas with now, all you got to do is just share it on social media. All you got to do is get a spot on TV, and you instantly have more eyeballs attracted to your content than you did, 30, 40 years ago. So the art or the act of becoming famous is a lot easier nowadays than it was, 40 years ago. Secondly, the types of people who strive to be the influencers, who think it's their goal in life to become famous because they're so incredibly interesting and their life is so wonderful that they just have to share it with all of the world. When that doesn't happen, these people will say, "Well, it's society's fault that it's the racism in our world is the reason why I can't be famous." They come up with every reason why they can't be famous, and it's always a reason. They always go to all the reasons why the state should do something. Like you look at all these influencers, they are all on the left. All of them are all the blue anon folks, if you will. And there's a reason for that. It's because that's the world that these people exist in. And that's the world that's been pushed to the forefront, is this. So it's not at all a surprise to see that these folks are all, rank and file, like, Antifa, not Antifa members, but like leftist members. I don't know.
I will say when I mentioned the cure for all this, and Joe did it long before me.
Throw the switch on the internet?
And, well, I'm not for that necessarily. But, I did this week of Thanksgiving, so we're coming up 2 months now. Let's get off of social media completely. I remember I was at church 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the pastor was like, he was giving an example of, how many folks here have social media? And everyone raised their hand but me. And I can finally say that. I mean, yes, my accounts exist, and I wrote a whole article about that.
Don't use it.
But I don't use them, I post the show and I post articles. What I do is I go onto my Substack and I click the share button, and my Facebook's linked to it, so it just sends it automatically. Just as a place where people can outreach, because not everyone visits the Substack to get articles, so it's a way they can read along. But no, I don't have it, and it changes you. I will say that I'm getting more and more people to join me, and it's only been a net positive. Like, I don't regret. The only regrets I have is not doing it sooner, because there just wasn't anything of value. And anything of value that I found, the negatives were just so much greater than whatever positives that I could find. That's just the way you got to cure it. You have to get off of the fakeness of these sites and the addictiveness of these sites. Whenever the founders and the designers of these social media sites don't allow their kids to use them,
that should tell you something. I want to get your opinion on this too. I also think too that the type or the quality of content that is created now, it has less meaning, has less depth, is less creative. It's the process in which it is made has become so easy that people who wouldn't normally put the work in to make something creative and make something truly awesome and have a deeper meaning to it, because it's so much easier to do that now. The type of music, let's just use music as an example. You look at a lot of the #1 songs that are out there. You look at the writers. There's like 10 and 12 writers on these songs. Whereas you go back and look at, I don't know, the Beatles. There's a maximum of 4. Or if you look at Rush, there's only 3. Or you look at bands like other bands who only credit one artist as the writer in the band of 5. Whereas now, most of the artists, the popular artists today, don't write their own music, don't write their own lyrics.
Well, I think that's just a symptom of society's need for this
constant creation of
content. And like I've always said with necessarily social media, giving a platform for everybody can be good and bad. The fact that now you're able to just make an entire record off of your computer in your bedroom, which you can do. Theoretically, I could do that. I have the software. I could make an entire professional record. It may not sound as good as a professionally mixed record, but I can make a competent record on my computer. Is that necessarily a good thing? Yes, I would say necessarily. Giving everyone the tools to do that is good, but you get a lot of crap produced out of that, and I think you're seeing that now. I think you're also seeing, I don't like a boomer, but whenever your number one hit songs, I think that Rick Beato did a video. Which, if you don't know who Rick Beato is, what are you doing?
If you
go
like
check.
music,
If you're a music nerd, go check him out. He broke down, I think it was the 10 songs that were for the Grammy best song of the year. In most of these songs, I'd say there's one or two that even I'd have to admit that are pretty catchy, and they're pretty good, pretty well written songs that even though I necessarily don't like them and I still on music, I listen to that and say, okay, that's a nicely written song. There was some effort put into that. That's not just the same boring beats and lifeless melodies and just super auto-tuned compressed vocals and whatever else. There's actually a song there. But most of it is just, there's many just people my age that just kind of just listen to trash, and that's not because I'm a boomer and, even though I do have the taste in music of a music boomer. I mean, look at my some record reviews. I got Bruce Springsteen and David Bowie, which I wrote a whole piece, just the last January 10th and January 7th in 2016 and 2020. We lost to Neil Peart and David Bowie, two of my favorite, probably both guys are my top 5 favorite artists of all time. And I just, just saying there won't be anyone like them. And I think that, Bowie would have been 75 this year, and Neil Peart would have been pushing, I think he'd been 71 this year, I believe he would have been, or 70 if he was still alive. And look, Bowie will be remembered for long after I'm gone. Bowie will still be listened to. What's crazy right now is I've always thought about this when it comes to art, is in my room I have a original 67 Sgt. Pepper's U.S. record vinyl and an original U.S. Abbey Road 1969. Lord willing, I will live to see those records be 100 years old, because we're only about 50 more years away from those being 100 years old. Will artists of today, and I'm talking about big artists, will Justin Bieber, will BTS, Taylor Swift, will they be remembered 100 years from now? Because I know Billie Eilish, I know for a fact that Abbey Road will be as popular right now as it will be 100 years from now. Because why? Because that is a masterpiece. Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, that'll be remembered when it's 100 years old. David Bowie's Heroes, those will be remembered when they reach 100 years old. Why? Because they're all long gone. They're all way past their prime. They have exited the spotlight, and they're still remembered and beloved. I don't see the staying power of any of these artists, and I think that is just a symptom of people of art being dumbed down. You're seeing this in film. You're seeing this in in video games.
Don't get me started on film.
You're seeing this everywhere. You're just seeing this dumbing down of art, and it just appeals to the common denominator. And I think it has a lot to do with money.
Oh yeah. It's a quick buck.
But that's what I see. I don't see. I think that you're seeing a lot of these because they're counting streams now into a way that they're saying that records sold, because no one really buys music anymore. They just stream it. So I think the way they're calculating streams into like records purchased, and that there's records now and songs now that are breaking all time buy, I'm doing quotes, records sold, but will people actually remember, and will they be cherished, and will, I've tried to really start collecting vinyl because, everything's so digital now that, if I ever have kids and grandkids, I want to be able to say, hey, let's listen to Led Zeppelin 1 vinyl.
You want to listen to Mr. Roboto?
Yeah,
I have that on vinyl too. The
yeah,
6th album.
let's listen to 5150 by Van Halen, and let's look at what music was supposed to be. We're supposed to hold a physical thing, and I think that's also that so many people I know when they hear a song or whatever, just sing a song for Existence, and it came out like 2014. Oh, that song's so old. That's an old song.
Or it came out 2 years ago.
It came out 2 years ago. That's some of their older material 2 years ago.
I listened to that, or I watched that video too from Rick Beato, the top 10 lists of the top 10 songs for the year, and I am not a fan of Billie Eilish. I do not like her music at all, mostly because of the way she sings. I hate the real breathy lack of pronunciation in words. To me, that's a personal gripe. That drives me crazy. And some of the production quality decisions of like, oh, I want to sound like I'm in a phone booth. That to me is a bad idea, to make a vocal sound like you're in a phone booth. It's just not good.
I have no issue with that.
If it in the right context. But her whole love letter to L.A. thing, do you not see what's going on in L.A. right now? The mass exodus? Like, how tone deaf can you be?
Well, we've been to LA. It's nothing, and this is before COVID. Nothing really to write a love letter about.
Unless you live in Beverly Hills. I mean, what else is the point to love about LA?
The only thing I loved in LA was the In-N-Out Burger.
Yeah,
that's about it.
The Bruno Mars song, "Leave the Door Open." I kind of liked that. If Earth, Wind, and Fire didn't ever exist.
Yeah, and I guess that plays into the
but the two songs that I really liked were just very simplistic, because there was one, I think it was Alicia Keys, and I can't remember the lady's name. Yeah, but it was just a piano song because it was real, it was raw.
It's a song.
And I think the last song on the list was the same thing. It was real, it was raw, it was real drums, it was real guitars, it was real. The Lil Nas X song and the Justin Bieber song, the Peaches song, whatever. This is the most derivative garbage, just sewer, the pond scum in a sewer of just nonsense. There's no variations in tempo or in anything. It's just nonsense.
I've heard this 1,000 times before.
Yeah, like this has been done, but it seems like today, especially with the Bruno Mars songs, like the new, and even with movies today too, like they're resurrecting Jurassic Park and Star Wars and Star Trek, is that this is the decade of reboots. Not reboots, but it's a decade of
rehashing the past.
Rehashing the past, but it's a repetition of imitation, is what it is. They're taking something that's already existed for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, and trying to revive it after the world and the consumers are starving for something new. We get our quick fix and high off of the new Jurassic Park or the new Star Wars, new Star Trek movie, and we're still wanting something more, but yet they continue to give us just more of a reboot of the same.
I think that's where we're at. I think we're at culturally, and that just placating into people becoming famous. I think it all loops back around. That you see these mediocre people become famous, and they think, "Oh, well, I'm mediocre, right? I can do it too." And I think the bar has been set so low that previously, I mean, I think, sure, pop music's always been catchy. You could even listen to the pop music of the 60s and the 70s, and it's always been catchy.
Beach Boys.
Well, the Beach Boys and those,
but see,
and
even
those
there, though,
early,
was different.
Well, and those early Beatles songs are very catchy as well. But go look into the early Beatles. I mean, if you know music, go look at the music for that. It's very well written. It's very yes. Songs like
I want to hold your hand,
and A Hard Day's Night. Those are very, catchy, sappy, lyrically songs. But go look at the music. It's very well written. There's a lot of weird chords. And, of course, Beatles got more complex and just,
production quality grew.
Basically, as
they matured as a band.
As masterful as you can in songwriting in the later records that's ever been seen in pop and rock music. But I think that there was a level of sophistication to music back then, and even though it was very, I think if most popular song of this decade might be, unfortunately, a song like WAP or whatever. But you look at the past, and I guess this is still me playing into the whole boomer mentality, but I think there's a difference, and I think that because you had that bar of entry so high that you had to at least be somewhat competent before you became famous, it did weed out a lot of the crap of the past before the internet. That's not necessarily a good thing. I think that giving everybody the opportunity is not necessarily a bad thing, but I think you do get a lot of crap that kind of gets through the gate that used to be there at one point. And I think that's where we're at now. And these kids will only become famous, and I think it'll solve the problems. And I think that if they don't become famous, that their whole world will be crushed. Like, look, if we never gain one more viewer of this podcast, my world will not be crushed. No. If I don't get one more subscriber on my Substack, my world will not be crushed. Because you know why? That's not what defines me. Fame is not something that I am, defined by. Hey, if this show one day gets Joe Rogan numbers, awesome. I think that'd be incredible, and I'd be incredibly grateful for it. But if it doesn't, I'm still Jacob Standridge.
You know what we're missing?
What?
Get off my lawn, you whippersnappers!
Get off my lawn! We're gonna let. I've always said.
I just watered the grass. Get off my lawn!
I've always said that if I catch my kids listening to trap music, I'm going to be like, turn that crap off, get in your room and listen to Led Zeppelin until you like it. But Dad, I don't want to listen to Rambling On. Nope, get back in there.
Rock and roll until you die.
Rock and roll until you die. Until you can air drum Tom Sawyer, you're not coming out of your room. That's an order, young man.
You know what I've been listening to a lot of recently?
What?
Is Charlie Parker.
Charlie, I'm not ringing a bell. Is he...
The jazz, the saxophone player.
Oh, yeah. Dude, you gotta check out some Oscar Peterson.
I see, for me, the piano is great, but I used to play saxophone a long time ago. I played it for like 2 months. So the saxophone to me is a little, I somewhat understand it a little bit better, so I can appreciate it more. I have a hard time listening to a lot of more like the Buddy Rich style jazz because there's just so much going on.
It's so chaotic.
It makes me chaotic, and
Buddy Rich jazz makes me anxious.
Yeah.
Because like it's kind of building, but it doesn't really go anywhere per se, and it's not a bad thing. It's just how that style of jazz is written. But Oscar Peterson, I can just put Oscar Peterson like the Spotify This Is playlist, and I'm calm. I'm soothed because usually it's just the piano, an upright bass, maybe some strings,
some drums,
and maybe a little bit of drums,
some brushes,
and sometimes he'll have a saxophone or trumpet player, but it's just very calm and soothing, and I love it. The guy is awesome.
You know, it's such a stark contrast where I work, because where I work it's the top 10 list of the most popular songs right now, the Grammy list, right? And here I am listening to Charlie Parker and sometimes Oscar Peterson and Miles Davis, like.
Hey, you can't go wrong with Miles Davis.
How the great chasm between the two groups here, between me and everyone else that I work with, and even in our friend groups too, the vast chasm that exists between us, the type of music that we would consider good, and what they like is such a vast difference that it's like, what happened? What happened here? Well, tell me where I lost you. Like, you understand what I'm saying?
It's the dumbing down of culture. That's where we're at.
Are you saying
society.
that people listen to pop music are dumb?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that. I think it's just we've been grown to accept this mediocrity. And I think we've been grown to accept it.
Is mediocrity into idiocracy?
So I don't think that if you like top 40, you're necessarily a stupid person. I don't think that's it at all. And then also, not to say that if you don't just love Low by David Bowie, you just have a bad taste in music. That isn't, you don't have to just be. Look, I always joke about having the definitive music taste, because I think I do. But look, if you don't like Tom Sawyer by Rush, or you don't like anything by Bowie or the Beatles, and you don't have a bad taste in music, I think everyone has that difference. But look, even if you like top 40 stuff, and you just don't like the older stuff that we like, or even some of the new stuff that I like that's well written and well produced, you can't sit there and be like, hey, you know that new Justin Bieber album or that new Lil Nas album? Hey, when that thing turns 50, people are still gonna be listening to it.
No,
you can admit that and be like, hey, you know, like BTS, how they're like the biggest thing in the world right now. You know, in 30 years, no one's gonna be listening to them.
I mean, if you look at it like this, right? So people will still go out and buy albums from the Beatles, right? That still happens. Well,
I do.
Well, not just you, but that still happens, right?
Yes.
People still do that. Vinyl collecting is a huge thing right now. Do you think people will be going out 20 years from now looking for Mariah Carey CDs?
You pulled Mariah Carey because you hate Mariah Carey.
I mean, but honestly, though.
Do you know that?
If streaming went away at some point, do you think people would be going through the record shops and the vinyl shops looking for Mariah Carey CDs? No. No, because her music is incredibly forgettable.
It's gonna be a lot of people mad. I mean, I think that you can criticize everyone else we criticize, but I think some people love Mariah Carey.
I don't know why.
She's indifferent to me.
There's nothing there.
Again,
that vocal range isn't real.
It's not true. It's not true. She can sing that.
Really?
She's done it live.
Really?
Yes, she can sing that.
Really? Do you want to see all the videos of her not doing that?
After the show, we'll look at it, okay?
Okay, all right. Because
we're almost... This Tim Pool micro rabbit trail has gone on. It's gone from college to music to another boomer rant on social media and good music and hating Mariah Carey. And now we've finally come full circle. This is one of the longest shows I've ever done.
This is the example of Tim Pool and Thucydides's trap. He asks everybody that question.
That's right. Just put him in a little finger trap.
Yeah.
But no.
Jeez, is it 10 o'clock?
It is 10 o'clock. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast. If you liked what you listened to and you want to support the show, hey, you're in luck. So join the website, Patreon, shoot us $5 a month. Get the show a day early. Best way to support us. Hey, we also got T-shirts. You can get a thermos. You can get a sticker.
Get a mug.
Hey, you get a sticker. Put it on your laptop, and then whenever you're at Starbucks or your other favorite a liberal to coffee shop,
swanky coffee place,
your yuppie coffee shop,
your hipster coffee place.
Someone's like, hey. That's the Standing Brothers. You know, what's that all about? And then you could be like, hey, you should listen to it. And then whenever that yuppie person listens to the podcast, their mind's blown, and they become, you know, right, the next incarnate of some Ray Rothbard in the making. Maybe I'm not saying that will happen, but it could. it could happen. You could have the next.
Their nonsensical delusions of grandeur of hipsterdom will be blown firmly out of their butt.
It's true. I'm not saying it will happen, but it could happen. My Substack, libertyoverdrive.substack.com, is the best place to get my thoughts. I did say last episode that my post might be kind of winding down. I may not be posting as much because of school. That's still going to happen. I'm still going to try to post something at least once or twice a week on there. I love my music related stuff. I've been doing a lot of music related stuff. Whenever I get a new vinyl record, I talk about it, but since I'm kind of cutting back on buying records for right now, I may go through my collection just do a record of the week.
Some that I have.
Yeah,
I've got some good ones.
Because there's plenty of records. I know the one I've really been wanting to write about is "The Stranger" by Billy Joel, which I think is one of the best rock pop records.
Do I have it or do you have it? Glass House.
I have Glass House, but I have an original "The Stranger." And that record is just it might be one of the most flawless pieces of pop music ever. Because I mean, you know, Piano Man's not on there, but everything else is, and it just from start to finish, that record is perfect. It's one of the perfect records out there, and it's so good. So I want to talk about that one. I've also got, you know, a Still Sealed H2O by Hall & Oates. It's really, really cool. I am writing, my next one I'm going to write about is I did get Heroes by David Bowie, an original, so I want to write about that. But I want to do the Bruce Springsteen first.
You know, I wish I could swim like dolphins could swim.
I wanted to do the Bruce Springsteen because I already did 2 Bowies, and I want to do 3 Bowies in a row. But yeah, I just like talking about music, and then I talked about...
you know what I have in my room that you need to do?
What?
Hemispheres.
I do have a bunch of Rush records, and I think
you haven't done one of those yet,
I think I want to do a Rush record soon. But you know, I like to keep my album things nice and short and concise, because I think that they're way smarter people that talk about music.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
That I want to give my personal effects on them and my personal taste on them. But like, if you're looking for a review and you're looking for like a critical analysis of like, oh, well, what does David Bowie mean whenever he says this and this lyric and how
lyrics
you're not gonna find that from me. You're just gonna find somebody who appreciates it and what I like about it. And that's just kind of what I'm gonna do.
But you know. Also, I have an original pressing of VOA Sammy Hagar's album.
That's right.
The one that has "I Can't Drive 55" on it.
Hey, that's a good
one. I've got that one.
So yeah, just check those out. And of course, links will be down in the description. Joe, got anything else for the podcasts?
Well, I mentioned Mike Rowe as the way we're going to end this, and we went another 45 minutes. So...
We did go an extra 45 minutes. This might be the one that breaks 2 hours. Well, we're close to 2 hours. I don't think we've ever broken 2 hours, but It's not going to be tonight. Let's save us for next one. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We'll be back here hopefully on Friday with another episode. Take it easy. Have a great week.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, plane. Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. We got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.